Hello, and welcome to another episode of Creating Cultures That Outperform. I hope you've been following this series. We switched over to AI some time ago. We've been doing enterprise-wide AI, and I'm here with my buddy George Pace, who has been doing AI since 2016. I think that makes him a pioneer of sorts. Um,
I should get my Davy Crockett hat.
I think you should. I think you should get the Davy Crockett hat. So we've been covering enterprise-wide AI transformation. We've got a whole series of episodes going back on AI quite some time. I'm going to get us back on the stage here. And George, you dropped off. I don't know. I probably got my scene
There you
set
go.
up incorrectly here. I don't know.
That's all right.
And so enterprise-wide AI transformation, let's get into it. We've covered a lot of material. What's new this week? Well, a couple things happened. We know agentic AI is gaining ahead of steam. I see more and more stuff being written about that. You too, George?
Oh, it's everywhere. And this
Yeah.
is just a small sample of what's going on. Between the agents themselves, the best practices, the platforms, the protocols between them, it just seems like every day there's a new announcement.
Yeah. And so two things that are noteworthy. This is news you can use. OpenAI released a practical guide to building agents, and Google actually released a free 10-hour course on AI essentials at Coursera. If you want to get the practical guide to building AI agents, quickly just, Google. It'll take you a second. You could download the PDF. I did 32 pages. I think it's well done. And here's the course on Google AI Essentials. You'll see it's on Coursera. They say it takes about 10 hours. I think you can do it quicker. It's all self-paced, of course, because it's on Coursera. But these are both valuable, actually. And some people have done mini versions of the Google Essentials course. So for people who are just new to AI and want to learn more about it, I think that's a good place to start, quite honestly.
Yeah, and there's lots of essential courses out there. Microsoft has one, NVIDIA has one, Google has one. If I said Microsoft again, they're out there, right? So there's not one that's any better or any worse, at least from an essentials perspective. And then you start working up. The other one we could have added to here, which, we're trying to keep it, concise. Even Anthropic this past week had a similar type of announcement. I forget what they had, some guide or best practices guide as well. So there's a wealth of information that's out there. As I like to tell people, you need to build your daily feed. I don't care if it's through Google Alerts or just going through LinkedIn. But if you don't have that weekly feed in place, it's not a good thing. I would tell you, make sure you have a weekly or daily feed.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I've got so much stuff coming in on a daily basis, so I can try to stay on top of what's happening. But there's a lot of action activity out there. Certainly, try to stay on top of this. Drink a little bit each week. Eventually, you're going to be really ahead of the curve.
Yep.
So here's what we've been looking at: the major cost drivers of enterprise trust. We're going to go into take a somewhat different tack next week as we begin to dig into governance around this. How would you actually do this? And we covered these pillars in the first episode on enterprise-wide transformation. Of course, the strategic, organizational, trusted enterprise data, looking at the technology stack and the interpersonal pieces, how those all play into really being successful at driving an enterprise-wide AI transformation. People are looking at this in bits and pieces. They're experimenting. They're doing things. They're not really looking holistically, and they're going to have to answer this question: what does it cost?
And remember, one of the things that we'll be doing, and again, we're still navigating the waters here as well, but each one of these pillars or columns is going to be decomposed in a sense. So some may have 3 major topics, some may have 5 major topics, but the idea is that cost encompasses all of those pieces and parts. So we're trying to figure out a way to put this in bite-sized modules, as it were, to be able to give that guidance.
Yeah, exactly. And keep it at a high enough level, but yet accurate so that you can use it, right? It's going to be success is situational. The true cost is going to depend on where you are, what your tech debt is, and things that work or don't work.
Yep.
And so over the prior 2 episodes, we went through all of the ingredients on this except for AI trust. And we said we were going to get back to you today to go through AI trust and talk about what does that look like really? we get into just AI trust, and you want to make something trust that's something that's prevalent rather than non-existent or project centric. If you want to do it enterprise wide, what does that look like? So let's take a look at this. And here's a slide actually George had put together. And so you can see this is broken out into a number of different components, but you have the agents on top, these agent enhanced workflows supported by trusted data and technology and orchestration layer, creating trusted outcomes. And then you have the interpersonal, organizational, and strategic trust underneath.
Yeah, and the idea here, again, this is to try and keep this simple, because I could have made a really complicated diagram here if I wanted to. But if we just start with the enhanced agent workflows, there's going to be an infinite number of patterns here. It could be human in the middle. It could be mostly human with some agentic AI. It could be a lot of agentic AI and no humans. It really doesn't matter what that construct looks like. What is important is, if you look at this almost in that proverbial, my enterprise architect is coming out. If we look at this as the proverbial wedding cake, your trusted data and your technology, that really is your trust is built on how consistent are those platforms working? How consistent is the data that's being fed? In order to get that trusted outcome, you really need to establish trust at each one of those steps in the workflow. There's other pieces around this, which are the organizational, which are on the bottom, which provide kind of the pattern or the skeleton for all of this. And just think of the trusted data and technology being the connective tissue that goes on that skeleton.
Yeah, and we're talking about both structured and unstructured data, both of which are going to be fed into these LLMs. And so most companies don't really have good control over their data. They've tried master data management. They've done all sorts of stuff, but they've never really nailed down how to develop complete trust in their data across the enterprise.
And again, if you look at this from a complexity perspective and why we're tackling this with the experience that we bring to the table, if you focused on the orchestrated, or I'll call it the enhanced workflow, if all you did was assemble those pieces like a bunch of Lego blocks, and you say, I got one here, one here, one here. What we're going to talk about next week, or start talking about, is the governance piece of this. Because if you think about it, start at the very bottom and work up. Does the component align with your strategic direction? Has your legal department figured out what the rules of engagement are to effectively say, here's what needs to be in a contract to protect the organization? How are individuals going to work with this, and as well as management, to know that when they bring these products in, there is a vetting process to make sure that the appropriate vendor or the appropriate products win? When you then look at your technology stack, when you look at your data stack or your data capabilities, all of this are the pieces or the constituent pieces and parts that establish trust. And if you don't have the foundation in place, you're never going to get a trusted workflow, or one that's going to give you, at least in the confines of safety, or answers that you're looking for.
And, governance is extremely important. I've been an enterprise CIO across multiple Fortune 250 companies. I started my own company as a CEO. The reality is most companies don't have very good governance structures. They have it at the level of the board and the executive teams, but they don't have real good enterprise governance going down lower levels. And so when you look at decision making, one of the things as we went into enterprises and started measuring their culture, you would find that decision-making speed was really slow. It was in the way of things. And that's because they were missing governance mechanisms, not to create bureaucracy, but so people know where to go and how to get things done. Who owns that decision? How often does that group of people meet? I've got to have their input on what I'm doing. And it's not bureaucracy. It's about stopping tech debt and bad decisions from building up all over the company needlessly, because you don't have the controls in place to get to the right decisions. And I do fear people will say, oh my God, that's bureaucracy. Tons of people will go off. They'll be buying this agent, that agent. Eventually it's not going to work together, which is what happened on every other generation of technology. They didn't come at the enterprise as an architectural problem.
And having created the original open source office at Prudential, I created an entire governance process that was actionable. And that really needs to be the takeaway when you talk about governance, is that, is this now actionable? It's not meant to be a roadblock. It's not meant to be a wall. It's not meant to be an impedance. It's really about enabling. And there are things that you can do and decisions that can be made that are saying, okay, we've made this decision. We have this requirement. How have we made the process easy for everyone in the company to consume? That's really what governance is.
That's exactly right. And it's not about having governance injected in places where you don't need that kind of oversight or control. It's about doing it in places where it's really required. And
It's
I think
back
the open source office is a good example, right? What open source do you bring in? What are the controls around bringing it into the enterprise? Are you injecting a lot of unlicensed software because it was in the open source components and you didn't know about it? I mean, there's so many things that people do in enterprises that can lead to problems because they don't really understand the ramifications. And that's where governance comes in here, that you can move ahead as fast as you can, as effective as you can, and as safely as you can.
Oh, and don't forget, let's say that, I'm in the company today and I put together those 4 agents, and then I leave, and then Frank comes in behind me. He has no idea what I did. So this idea of what is a governance, how do you get that visibility? How do you do it consistently? This is what a governance function really is meant to do.
Yeah, 100%. And so the governance piece is going to be a very important discussion here.
And it's going to be multiple, and it's likely going to be multiple pieces, because we're going to talk about governance first.
Pieces, multiple episodes. It's the fabric that's going to hold this whole thing together and allow you to actually be successful.
And it is a cost. Let's be honest. There's a cost to doing this. The goal is to make sure that you want to maximize the effort and minimize the amount of investment in it, but you're going to need to feed a governance process, which is part of this overall cost that we're talking about.
And naturally, if you're looking for help on how to actually build and structure enterprise-wide AI transformation and rollout, hey, always feel free to reach out, because, we're here to help.
We've done it.
Yep. And so how much trust are you going to do? So I went to punchlines.ai and said, hey, give me a joke on AI trust. And it says, I'm only going to trust technology as far as I can throw my Roomba.
There you go.
There you go. So next week, we'll be covering governance, the enterprise-wide governance. What are the mechanisms that need to be put in place? How do you structure it? How do you look at that? How do you take those 5 pillars and the success criteria we put together, and how do you actually meld it into a governance structure that's going to put the right pieces in place, not bureaucratically, but in terms of success factors for you to actually venture forward and have a lasting success without a bunch of tech debt and bad decisions that have to get revisited all over the place, because that's typically what happens.
Been there, done that.
Yep. So we're here every Wednesday at 3:00 with another episode. Hope you can join us to understand enterprise-wide AI governance. And we'll see you then. You take care.
Take it easy, everyone.